Namaskar. Hello and welcome to PGurus channel. I'm your host Sree Iyer. If I mention the name Rutgers, what comes to your mind? Well, exactly. What happened is something very interesting, perhaps a pleasant surprise came the way of Indian American students and Indians in general. Perhaps I can even say Hindus in general, because something interesting came out from Rutgers. What Rutgers decided to do was it has rejected attempts from a privileged set of academics and students to misuse DEI and target a small minority. Say they refuse to include the word caste as caste-based discrimination as another clause, because they agreed that it is already covered in a broader canvas. To understand all these things, the implications and what it means for Indian American students considering going to Rutgers, I'm joined by Pushpita Prasad and Nikunj Trivedi of CoHNA. Let's welcome both the guests. Namaskar to both of you. How are you?
Namaste.
Namaste.
Always a pleasure to be here.
Thank you, and the pleasure is mine. Pushpita ji, I'll start with you. What happened at Rutgers? Maybe you can bring us up to speed.
Sure. So I think it was a very important development today because as some of your viewers might know, for the past 4 years, we have sort of seen a runaway train of caste activism in the United States and Canada, where a bunch of privileged academics and activists have really been what I call manufacturing a caste narrative in the West. They've basically been pushing this belief and story that there is a lot of caste discrimination that happens in the societies right here. And I think they have done this successfully without an ounce of data. That is what has been so remarkable, that this has all happened without even one single proven case of discrimination. Your viewers probably remember that they convinced the state of California to file a lawsuit against Cisco Systems and Sundar Iyer, a 4-year witch hunt that finally came to an end for the two Indian American engineers involved in 2023. And then there was the famous California SB 403 fight, which tried to do exactly what Rutgers was asked to do. So add caste to a protected category in the Rutgers policy. Now, why is this important and how did this come about? Because in August of last year, we're now in 2025, August of 2024, there was a task force headed by our favorite professor, Audrey Truschke, that published its quote-unquote findings. And it was a very funny kind of report, honestly, because it said, to sum it up, it said that we couldn't really find reports of systemic caste discrimination. What the report did offer was a bunch of anecdotes. And some of the anecdotes are frankly weird, like, oh, I was at a CAA protest and somebody said, 𝗤𝗙𝗙𝗏 𝗔𝙾𝗀𝘀𝗀. I'm not sure how that's a casteist remark at all. You can say that's not a remark in good taste or something, but where's the caste angle coming in? So there was a whole bunch of weird anecdotes. We'll send you a link to some of the weirdness we pointed out from that report. And effectively, the ask of that task force was, we couldn't find anything. So please give us more money so we can continue this investigation and find things. So that was, in a gist, and a bunch of anecdotes with, oh, somebody said something, or we hear somebody said something. Like some of the anecdotes were not even firsthand. They were like third hand. Somebody said something in a class that a professor heard and reported to this task force. I mean, it was insane. So anyways, they used that as a basis to ask for more money and ask Rutgers to put caste in a protected category. And today, Rutgers gave its decision. Great news being that they have said no, they will not be adding caste to a protected category for the very same reason that California vetoed the law. It's already protected. So, again, to contextualize, we are against discrimination on any behalf. And anybody who has been discriminated should get justice. And guess what? They can already do it under existing laws, under existing policies. And so our take has always been the only reason to add caste to a protected category is really to put a target on the back of the Indian Americans and the Hindus, because caste is very clearly in the American mind associated with Hindus and with Indian Americans. And so when they hear this term, it's, whether they're just going to think of this community as more hierarchical, more likely to discriminate, and more likely to oppress than anybody else. And I think that is something that we reject wholeheartedly.
Thank you so much, Pushpita ji. And I would like to bring Nikunj onto this discussion. Nikunj, CoHNA has put in a lot of effort in the background to try and make the Rutgers University, whoever is the decision-making body, to see this thing in the right and proper light. Talk to us a little bit about the efforts that CoHNA has put in into this one. And also, CoHNA has been very active now among the student community. Maybe a little bit of context on that too, Nikunj.
Yeah, absolutely. And we when we started CoHNA 4 years ago, the objective was to build a grassroots movement for Hindus from all walks of life. And one of the things that we discovered in that is it's really crucial for young people, young Hindus, to be involved of all generations, whether they're born in Bharat and coming over here or born and raised here, and especially those who are born and raised here because they are aloof from a lot of the Indian politics and things like that, and they themselves have a sort of like not a good understanding. So the target was to focus on them and get them more active in this. If you think about all the Palestinian protests and everything that's going on, one signature feature that you see is that there are a lot of young people in these protests in the front. A lot of them are led on campus. Think about all the different things that are going on. But when it comes to protests on Bangladesh, on Kashmir, many things that are important for Hindus in general, you'll find that you don't find so many young people. In fact, it's mostly people who are above their 40s and 50s and 60s and things like that. So we wanted to change that dynamic. So we started a organization within CoHNA called CYAN, CoHNA Youth Action Network. So we now have chapters in a few places, and it's growing now more and more. So some of our team members at Rutgers basically said, okay, this is happening. So we've been monitoring the situation for the past several months. This study that Pushpita ji was referring to happened in August. But even before that, this was going on. So there have been a couple of student organizations specifically set up for this particular situation, okay, to fight against the Hindu community. There's a really funny sounding organization as like this really long acronym. And one of them was, as part of that is Fatima Sheikh, who lately Professor Dalit Mandal from Bharat has actually said that he had made up that character. So this is the type of lies that you start to see in many places being peddled. So some of these groups are specifically set up. So we started to take note of that, and our students on campus started to give us information, say, hey, this is happening. So they started to engage with other student organizations. So the first thing was to educate other student groups because they had no idea that this was going on. So they started to connect with the various Hindu and Indian and other organizations on campus to let them know that this is happening. The second thing is when the other side launched more recently, they launched a campaign to support the adding a caste as a protected category. Our students sort of said, went back to the administration, went back to other student organizations and said, hey, we need to oppose this. So as 2025 started, these kids were, gearing up and really doing a lot of work so that when the university starts in a week or two, they are really hitting the ground running and stuff. So a lot of work has been put in by these kids on campus, and they are, sort of like part of our CoHNA Youth Action Network. And this was crucial because on the ground presence gave us a lot of intelligence that this is happening, what to do, how to do it, and we were able to support from the adult side, support them. Make sure that they don't, they're not alone in this fight, right? And it's not just about the CoHNA group. It's also any other Hindu organization who wants to join us on campus. We were able to, support them. Now, students are scared, to be very honest, and the reporters are asking, hey, can a student come out and say what they did, etc.? And they have refused flat out. They said that we have targets on our back. We live in this ecosystem. We are very concerned that our names will be out there. We may be doxxed. We may be subject to harassment. We may be targeted on campus. There are other groups like Students for Justice in Palestine that have gotten involved in this fight also, and they are known to be quite like aggressive and sometimes violent. So they are very concerned that when these types of activists are involved and when emotions run high, they will be targeted, bullied, and maybe even physically assaulted. So they don't want to come out in public. I asked them today to join today, but they basically said, no, thank you very much, but we won't join. We'll continue the work on campus, but we're not going to join.
Thank you so much, Nikunj. Now, viewers, those of you, parents especially, and even students who are considering going to school in the United States, Rutgers is a good university, except for a few people who probably are Hindu phobes. Rutgers is a good university, and we are going to come back and talk about a little bit about what other things Rutgers does. It's got a very good program in computer science. I'm going to come to that in just a moment. Nikunj bhai, stay tuned. Now,
Yeah.
I would like to ask Pushpita ji one question. Now, after this determination came, Equality Labs and Professor Audrey Truschke have both claimed victory. What makes them think that this is a victory for them?
Yeah, I think this is evidence of, everyone talks about misinformation, and I think this is a perfect example of how misinformation works and how it especially works, how it is weaponized against the Hindu community. Because as I have said many times, for Hindus, a lot of the hate and Hindu phobia comes surprisingly not from anonymous trolls, but from the very institutions who should be protecting us and whose job it is to fight this. So this is not an aberration. Universities, media, and some of the most privileged activists have been at the forefront of this movement, driving misinformation. This whole narrative is actually based on misinformation. I call it the castle of cards, which it quite literally is, because for 4 years, for 10 years, they've been talking about this one survey that has been declared unscientific, not just by Hindu organizations, so you can discount us. It has been declared unscientific by a Carnegie Foundation, and it has been declared inadmissible by California courts. Yet they continue at it. So I think what we see today is more of the misinformation. Now, obviously, because their main ask was to get caste added to the protected category. That was flat out rejected. Yet they're saying it's a victory. So, we're happy if they think it's a victory. Now, there was some details where, Rutgers said, oh, we will think of adding some caste questions within some DEI surveys that we do. And, we are putting some definitions around caste, etc. So you can say that there was some incremental, steps taken here and there. But that's basically, like saying that, I wanted the moon, but I'm happy to get some moonlight. So I think I defer to Nikunj on some of the more details on this, because he spent he looked at it a little bit more closely.
Yeah, and
Nikunj, over to you.
Yeah, and we have actually tweeted about it, as Pushpita said. Like these, we were it was so funny. Like they said, breaking news: Rutgers adds, bans caste discrimination. Okay, this was their victory lap. And to which we said, Rutgers never banned caste discrimination because it did not exist. Number one, there's no data to prove that. Number two, it already had a policy, and it basically literally says, if you look at this, if you look at our tweets, for example, we have taken the screenshot. Number one, it says that after reviewing all of these arguments, we have decided that existing policy, let me repeat that, existing policy already covers any case that needs to be reported. So current policy is sufficient. Number two, they also said that we do not endorse or accept the recommendations given by the caste task force that was headed by Truschke and company. Okay, they also say that in there. The third thing they say is that we will consider adding some questions, because they were like, okay, the best way to address this, maybe we can add a few questions. But then they come back and say they actually put a policy code. They say policy 6 something 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 already allows people to report instances of caste discrimination. So you can see one by one, they keep saying, hey, by the way, existing policy is enough, and we're giving you the code to which you can report caste discrimination instances. And we are not really subscribing to the recommendations given in the caste task force. While we appreciate their efforts and they're brought in to light something important, blah, 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 some word salad, they basically literally say that. And I'm happy to read that. But the point is, it's we have it on our tweets, but it's very clear that these guys are spinning it. So now what they said is, oh, they have now clarified. No, they have not clarified. What they have done is they have explained. They're saying, okay, how can you use ancestry to report caste discrimination? How can you use national origin to report caste discrimination? How can you use religion to report caste discrimination? And how can you use race to report caste discrimination? So they are just saying existing policy, existing policy, existing policy, existing policy to report caste discrimination.
Thank you so much. And let's talk a little bit about the other facets of Rutgers University. For example, about a year and a half ago, Nikunj, you were there. I'm not sure, Pushpita ji, you were there in that discussion. I know there was Prasiddha, and there was also, I think, Joe, if I remember correctly, of NCRI, Network Contagion Research Institute, which had conducted a very detailed study about how Hindus get abused on various social media platforms. Many of these social media platforms are not something that the average Indian perhaps knows in India, like 4chan, for example, and that's where the most vitrious, most vitriolic substance of words were used, and NCRI was the first to point it out. Now, NCRI continues to find all these Hindu-phobic terms. Nikunj, if your kid were to go to college today, would you send him or her to Rutgers, and why?
Remember, I'm a Rutgers alum, so I'm proud of being a Rutgers alum.
I'm preaching to the choir.
Yeah, I did my undergrad and my MBA both from Rutgers, and I've been involved in the university for the past 2+ decades. So it's a fantastic university. What has happened, unfortunately, is that because of the current woke environment and some of these the prevalence of some of these anti-Hindu elements, there has been some shift in the way some policies are evaluated, some internal things are going on. But I would tell parents that if you are concerned, then don't send your child to Rutgers. But what I would say is send your child to Rutgers, empower them to speak up, because we often sort of shy away and say, oh, no, we don't want to get involved in this. That's not the solution. The solution is to become part of the system, part of the institution, and fight from within. And that's what some of these brave kids at Rutgers who are there right now are doing. And to be honest, Professor Truschke, for example, is in a far-off campus in Newark. The heart of the campus, which sits in New Brunswick and Piscataway, has some amazing faculty members, an amazing environment that accepts a lot of, there's a lot of big Hindu and Indian events that happen. So there's a lot of celebration on campus, right? So a lot of students are proud of that. Many people are oblivious to this conversation happening many times, but there has been a growing concern, even there, that if this policy, for example, was going to be implemented, then students will be targeted and profiled. So there's got to be a word of caution. And if there are parents who I know who have expressed that concern through the parental, there's this, not a parent-teacher thing, but there's a parental group in Rutgers. So they have expressed that concern to the university, and the university has taken that into consideration. So we have to be active in the community. Rutgers is a large institution, right? And you have people who are speaking on both sides. You have, the sort of Israeli side, the Palestinian side. You have a Muslim side. You have Jewish side. You have Hindus. You have Sikhs, Buddhists, many, many different types of traditions out there. So it's a big university, a big tent. You have a professor like Truschke and some of our cohorts, but then you also have other professors. So we need to make sure that we can challenge. There are a lot of good Hindu professors who should be standing up and saying, no, we'll protect our students because this is our territory, and we need to make sure that we are helping these students. So I tell parents, don't discourage your students from going to Rutgers, but also empower them to be vigilant, to watch out and say, if you're finding this, if you're hearing about it, talk to me, talk to the university. There are resources, reach out to us, etc.
Thank you so much, Nikunj. Pushpita ji, I want us to take a step back, a little bit back up, and look at it from a slightly higher level. Do you think that there is a shift in winds now, wherein the campuses are going to start moving away from this DEI stuff? Because the wokeism, the DEI, and all the other stuff that has witnessed in the last 6 months to 9 months, after October 7th especially, people are now beginning to realize, that is at least the university level, that if they don't get this right, their whole student body is in danger of collapsing. So be that as it may, do you think now, perhaps for students who may want to, enroll in now it's January already, spring semester is almost started, so you have to apply for admissions only for the fall. Do you think by that time, the things would be a little bit better and the United States would be on its way back to the academic excellence that it is known for across the world? Over to you.
I mean, I think the macro trends are definitely heading in that way, but I think a couple of things, right? So this problem started in academia. It's most deeply rooted there. And honestly, I know we're talking about Rutgers, but it's pretty pervasive in all universities, right? So I think it's starting with the corporates, pretty heavily shifting away from DEI. We've all been seeing the news. Lots of companies have removed their DEI, dialed back their goals. On the university side, I think it's slower, and I think only a couple of, it's starting, but it's also the most entrenched there. So at what pace will it go in every university? We don't know. I think for parents and students, what I would say is, you have to, I think if the last year has shown us anything, and the Rutgers incident from this particular incident we're discussing shows us that standing, there is really no alternative to standing up for yourself and defending. It's hard, it's unpleasant, and sometimes it has consequences that one doesn't want to, but you can't really keep running away from a bully. Where will you run? It's Rutgers is not alone in its employment of Hindu-phobic professors. As Dismantling Global Hindutva Conference a few years ago showed us, they were in every university, public, private, big, small, liberal arts, STEM, US, Canada, even India. So, running away has its limits. And running away is never a good strategy. And in fact, running away is never what was taught to us in our dharma either, right? I mean, otherwise, what is the whole story of Gita about, right? Arjun should have just been told, oh, go do some bhajan or yagya, or, focus on your work, Arjun, and I'll take care of it. So I think the brave kids at Rutgers have shown us that, look, it's tough, but you can do it. And, we have another we actually have a chapter in Berkeley. And think about it. In Berkeley, our science chapter went and did a vigil for Bangladesh. I mean, this is literally about, the most progressive campuses, which you can think of. So I would say that is the way to look at the problem. And also, it's basically like Hindu phobia, right? It's quite literally like a virus that goes around. So the only choice you have is really to fight it. You can't really run away from a virus. Where will you go, right? So what we say is fight it. And as a parent, make sure you inoculate your kid against it. Because what is happening is, unfortunately, the community, we are all responsible. We are doing a poor job of telling our kids what might happen. Now, look, 95% of the kids will never face anything. And that's good. We don't want that. In fact, we want it to become 100% of the kids should never face anything. But just like a virus, you don't know why it hits somebody very hard and it hits somebody very less, and it doesn't hit most of the people at all, right? You just inoculate your child. And so you got to do that for Hindu phobia too. Prepare them for what's coming, empower them, give them the tools, and make them join communities on campuses, and yourself be part of communities and fight back. I think that's the way I would say to go for it.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Pushpita ji. Nikunj ji, I'll take a small detour here. I had a discussion with Sanjeev Newar, and he told me about 6 months ago, I think, and he said that he has been working towards training a bunch of Hindu chaplains, and the chaplains will start, getting into the campuses, so that if you are a Hindu and if you're looking for some spiritual enlightenment, there is a chaplain to talk to. I mean, this is something that's a given for many religions. Hinduism is kind of late to the party, but it's never too late. So now that is also happening. CoHNA involves itself in a lot of the activities that make sure that the child feels secure in wherever the campuses is. Talk to us a little bit about how many places CoHNA is working. What are your vision? What's your vision for the next few years? And then we can call it a wrap.
No, absolutely. And I think you brought up the good point on this. So the chaplaincy efforts as far as Hindus are concerned are still in infancy stage. There have been organizations, there is a organization right in the Bay Area that is doing this in partnership with the Berkeley Theological Institute. And then there is Chinmay Mission doing stuff. There is VHPA has something different, Hindu University of America. So there are different groups that have been giving chaplaincy certificates and programs. And then we have been working with some of the groups as well. So for example, there's I had been working with the Rutgers University chaplaincy's office. I helped set it up also a few years ago. There's chaplains in other universities as well. Some of them are paid, others are volunteer community leaders or community members. So this is really, really important, because you have to be part of the institutional framework in order for our children to feel supportive. And I go to Rutgers quite a bit, and I can tell you there have been students there who have come to me to speak for like 15 minutes, but ended up speaking to me for 2 hours because they were going through personal issues, spiritual issues, psychological issues. And I'm not an expert in any of those, but sometimes just a listening ear that knows that, okay, you know what, this person is there for me from the community is more than enough. And then other tools and things. So chaplaincy is really crucial. And I think as a community, we need to do that. CoHNA is going to be focusing on that in the coming, basically from 2025 onwards. We also want to increase the presence on campus. You know, we're the only advocacy organization that actually has a student arm that has physical presence on campus, because that's where ideologies, that's where thought process, everything is shaped. So if the Hindu community wants to ensure survival and its thrive in the future, it needs to make sure that on campus it has a presence, it has a supportive system for our students and our youth, and as well as faculty, because sometimes faculty don't feel empowered either, because they feel that if they step out of their comfort zone, they're going to be targeted, etc. So the Hindu community needs to be behind them as well. So that's one really important focus for CoHNA. And then also making sure that we have our footprint across the US and Canada. And now we have started to have chapters in multiple places. Just this past weekend, I was in Connecticut and we opened up a chapter officially there. So like that, Chicago and many different places, we are looking to and are starting to open up chapters, because grassroots, local boots on the ground is really, really important for Hindus. That's how a lot of community organizations in other traditions and religions succeed. And then connecting that with the young people as well as parents. So we have an entire ecosystem that we're building that connects community members, students, as well as parents together. So that's our sort of big vision for CoHNA. And we obviously welcome everyone to join us, no matter where you are in the US or in Canada.
Thank you so much, Nikunj. Thank you so much, Pushpita ji. And we'll be back with both of you and also other members of CoHNA as we discuss things that are affecting Hindu Americans in United States and elsewhere. Thanks once again. Namaskar.
Namaskar.
Namaste. Thanks for having us.